Hello everyone, welcome to an all new episode of the Indic Explorer channel. This is Vineet. We have a very special guest. I will pitch in my 2 cents here. Sure. You mentioned about Sanskrit scholars being multidisciplinary. There is a need for historians also.
I agree
to be multidisciplinary.
I said Sanskrit scholars need to be multidisciplinary if they are to counter things said about Sanskrit or Sanskrit texts.
Gender studies.
No, but see, the gender studies guy actually has a comeback for it. They'll say that your question itself is patriarchal. So that is a skill set that they have.
बड़े बड़े मीडिया हाउसेस में और हमारे जो फिल्म इंडस्ट्री है, इस तरह के इंस्टीट्यूट हैं, FTI वगैरह हैं, सब जगह पे और उन लोगों का ही इकोसिस्टम होता है, उन लोगों को ही सपोर्ट किया जाता है, बाकी लोगों को काफ़ी ह्यूमिलेट भी किया जाता है. This is fine, but a culturally rooted Hindu is not fine.
My parents were saying was right, but today young children want answers. Why you are keeping lamp like this? Why you keeping a particular murti like this? Children ask questions.
Food that you should eat. What all should you consider when you are eating meats? All of that comes in the Dinacharya chapter of Ashtanga.
They are accurately communicating, and I really want to emphasize this. They are accurately reflecting the views on Indian democracy of leading Indian intellectuals. Now, when I say intellectuals, I mean people who have institutional positions.
Right, where, as I said, Yudhishthir was the most righteous, Bhim was the most powerful, strongest, Arjun was the most skillful, he was the best archer in the world, Nakul was the most beautiful, the most handsome.
In conversatory Sanskrit, I would not employ certain verb forms which are exclusively present to denote something which is beyond time.
Different names, etc. But today we have only 3-4 types of temples that we are familiar with. Such detailed literature is written or detailed explanation is written about our temples, but then there is nothing related to the construction of the temples, like what kind of tools they used to use, what kind of hammers and the chisels they used to use, etc.
See, I'll give you one phrase which I often use, and it's mine, it's proprietary. Consumers don't buy brands, they buy benefits. You don't buy Colgate, you buy white teeth.
By saying कि साउथ में ज़्यादा है, नॉर्थ में कम है, नॉर्थ में पॉलिटिकल आर्टिकुलेशन ज़्यादा था, दक्षिण में कम था, दक्षिण में ज़्यादा अग्रेसिव था कास्ट मूवमेंट.
Format there through Zoom and through other things had gotten completely saturated because literally every platform, every person we know was doing that kind of a thing.
Don't do this. This is my culture. This is my ancestral identity. You do not have any qualification to do all this because for them it's now become a business, right?
To be honest, I've done so many things in my life, but my best innings, it hasn't even started. It's about to kick off now, and I'm sure the next few decades I will do so many things, and maybe things that I haven't even thought about so far. So this seems like it's just going to be very exciting, that's for sure.
Their time to shine right now, and not be bothered about all of the other bullshit. But yeah, I mean, it will affect employees for sure.
Famous in Bangalore that we can gift to this person. So they are not native Bangaloreans, but we want them to know or take away a piece of Bangalore with them. I think that's how it all started. Hey, there's so many things which are cool about Bangalore and about the city and about Karnataka as a whole. So can we curate a box of experiences, like not just things, but also maybe even edibles on what's famous in Bangalore. And so it is not a standardized box to your question on what's there in this box. We made it like a customized box. So if you have a friend visiting you, or if you want a Bangalore in a box, we send out a form. We ask a lot of questions about who is going to be using it and what do you know, what's your connection with the city, etc. And we curate the box and we personalize it. And Neil and I actually write a letter to this person. We make it as part of the box.
West. And we should learn from the mistakes of the West. They threw religion out. They basically became an absolutely godless society, and religion is right back in Western society in the form of wokeism. We should be very careful in not falling for the Western trap.
A university for culture, I think India needs to have that. They need to look at Ayurvedic universities, which is serious. I mean, they can really have a hospital attached. Today, if you think about a medical college, right, the most important requirement that the medical college needs to have is a hospital. It's not like that for engineering. I mean, you don't need to have a Mafatlal or a Reliance company alongside an engineering college.
Or a workshop. Yeah. Correct.
Right. Or a Microsoft. And that is the thing. Medical system, medical discipline is very, very rigorous, and it is needed.
Such a grand civilization in itself. And I think there should be more awareness about it. And these traditions should continue, these musical traditions. And I think mathematics is also very much linked to music. If universe is a machine, or so you can talk to it in terms of math. And if human beings are considered, then music is the language that connects all the people. So I think they are very much linked also.
Question: the underground element was to be completely uncensored and to explore the dimensions of performance art, of traditional art, through imagery, which might offend a few, but I think which is essential. And it's not offending you for the sake of offense, but it is just maybe sometimes too brutally honest and too in your face, and sometimes it might be very subtle.
I mean, if one group is not if there is some difference or if there is an issue, even if you take the community rights argument, the nation as a community is the biggest community. So what about the nation's flourishing? Right? It's everybody's business.
But that's exactly, you have put it so beautifully. I have to commend you for this. I know human rights are a myth. Nobody needs to tell me that. Similarly, group rights are also a myth. I just want to remind others of that.
That's an excellent question. It's an excellent question. I've actually written about this, and I will repeat what I've said. In India, it will take still some time before brands can create communities, because communities are already well entrenched. The brand in India has to become...
Consistently wondering what sort of questions you would ask and what should we say and all that, but you made it really comfortable, and it was a pleasure. It just felt like a lovely conversation.
And all the best for your podcast, and hope you get more and more such stories to share.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I also, in a way, it's such a refreshing change to not talk about political issues and not talk in such a very peaceful environment. Otherwise, it's a very heated environment and we sort of fight and struggle to speak. But thank you so much for giving me time, the space, and the platform to put across
the way you really test out a piece of work that you maybe painting you've done or whatever, as you show it to somebody, and the initial moment when they see it, if there's a reaction, and it makes you, it's kind of an impetus to keep doing more. What is truly underground? Well, a truly underground thing, in my opinion, if you look at it from an old school perspective, will be someone who's not on the internet at all. Now that would be underground for me in the June of 2022. And the only way you can discover that person would be to go find them physically. That would be underground at the moment. In 2020, when we all went into the zone of being locked down, get on our cell phones, and grandparents had to see their grandchildren, and people had to work, and you had to talk to your friends, and everyone just went online.
Many people, who are rediscovering Ayurveda also try to look at it in isolation as just a science, divorcing it from yoga, the philosophical, the spiritual aspects, which it's deeply intertwined with Hinduism and Hindu philosophy. So what do you think about that? Do you think it can be just isolated as a science away from the rest of the stuff?
Ayurveda is an instrument, okay, to understand more what goes on inside your bodies. So it is an instrument to assess where you stand in life when it comes to your health. And yoga, if I have to say very precisely, is the instrument to understand what is happening at the Atma level or the Atmic level. So Ayurveda and yoga are again different instruments to understand what goes on intrinsically.
What does the feminine want from the masculine? Because at an individual level, where do you think men get women wrong or don't get them fully? And what do women actually want? The $1 million quest.
It's the small things, it's things like the details. Women have a great memory, they never forget. And it's all about the details. We don't care about if you're rich, good looking, successful, whatever. We know when you like us, we know when you care about us, we know when you respect us or not. We'll go along with it sometimes, even when we know that it's not there. But in our heart of hearts, we know, and ultimately it will come out. But the details are so important, And then to remember she's the boss, especially when in the beginning, when you want something from her. I think there's too many men who want to prove that they're the boss or the man, the alpha thing. That never works. It's such a turn off, right? So there's so many things like that. But ultimately, what the divine feminine wants from the divine masculine is to be listened to be understood, to be loved, to be respected, to be treated as one, equal.
Yeah, and I think the other appealing part about the Mahabharata is the characters are so great, right? Nobody is pure evil or pure good. The part where you mentioned about Draupadi wanting those 5 qualities in her ideal partner, that episode kind of goes to show for young boys and girls that there is no perfect person who will have all the qualities. You got to make compromises in a relationship and move on.
When I was a teenager, I was going out, I was running away from home, I was going out to nightclubs, I was blah, 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 doing all these things. And yeah, I still love to go out and I love listening to music and all these things. But at that point of time, it was not coming from a place of enjoying life. Like you say, a lot of teenagers that we want to rebel for the sake of rebelling, and we don't actually know what we're doing, and what we are actually seeking is acceptance, okay? And because of the conditioning of society, and I think it comes down to not being loved. So essentially, at the end of the day, the teenagers of this modern youth, right, they're facing a massive disconnect because they have been conditioned from a young age to worship celebrities, right? To pin their sense of self-worth on their academic credentials and performance, to compare themselves with their peers and be cool and all these concepts.
Look at, you mentioned some of the Indian startups, right? Look at Byju's. Can you guess how many employees they had?
Not sure, maybe
take a wild guess.
What, 10,000?
They had 35,000 employees, man.
Wow. That's a startup.
Yeah, exactly. Right? So now I understand, they might be doing some work that requires 35,000 employees, but really?
Like if we look at our domestic helpers or our car drivers, their sons or daughters would still have nice Sanskrit names. But it's the well-educated class of people who have lost it.
Probably education is not wisdom, is all I can say.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Preeti is a writer, an author. She's written in multiple international news outlets. She's a geopolitical commentator. She's a spiritualist and an active practitioner of yoga. And she's also been an actress and a model. So how many hats have you worn on that head, Preeti?
Not enough, I guess.
So friends, you must be very, very aware of the Iyengar conspiracy. Reject Iyengarism. Embrace Vishnu. Embrace the lotus feet of Tirupati Balaji.
But what he doesn't realize is that I'm the Iyengar bulldozer. Yes. Okay, so on that very pessimistic note, we usually end this podcast on a slightly optimistic note, but it seems like this diagnosis has no good outcome left. But there is lots to ponder over from this podcast. So I hope the audience
the thing here is we should always end on an optimistic note.